Okay. Welcome everyone once again. I think we're already having a lot of people joining. You're welcome to the memory map, the workshop on documenting heritage sites. I am Ifetubori Excel Apoiwari, and I am the host for today's meeting. So before we begin, I would like everyone to, as you're joining, you can just give a brief introduction, your name, and then tell us your affiliation, and then probably the state you are joining from. So please just engage the comment section so that as we wait for others to join, I can just give a shout out to you for joining. So I'm Ife, and I'm joining from currently I'm in Ife, so I'm joining from Ife, Nigeria. So you can also do well to share, to engage the comment session. Okay, good evening, Dr. Adun from Ibadan. Thank you so much. We can keep it coming. Our main guest speaker is already here. Okay, we have Adeniyi from Abuja, Nigeria. Oh, we have Buki from New York and John Zulu from Zambia. Welcome everyone, especially to today's meeting. You're highly welcome. You're highly welcome. Okay, good evening to you, Hannah from Lagos, Cornerstone from Abule Iroko. Thank you for joining. Thank you. Hello. Okay, so welcome everyone. So once again, I'll just give us a brief breakdown into what we'll be doing today. We're going to have a talk on legacy mapping journey by Mrs. Kofo Adeleke, and she'll be sharing with us the background of legacy. Can we still hear me?
Hi, Effie, you cut out for a second, so you can.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you for the feedback. So we're going to be running through legacy mapping journey, and then we'll have another talk on why we are doing digital mapping by Dr. Olly Owen, and then we would have our main guest speaker. So right now we'll be having Mrs. Kofo Adeleke to take us on the legacy mapping journey. So if your hands are not too busy, you can type on the comment section and put a clap, a shout out as we welcome Mrs. Kofo Adeleke to have this session.
Hello everybody. So first of all, I'm going to share my screen. Okay. So first of all, I would just like to ask, can everybody see my screen?
Yes, we can. Yes, we can.
Okay, that's good. Okay, well, good evening, everybody. Right. So I'm really pleased to be here at this workshop on documenting heritage sites for a digital library. I think I've already introduced myself, Kofo Adeleke. I'm a trustee. So let's go straight ahead. The historical sites of Nigeria map. Now, the Digital Library on Heritage Sites project really builds on work by Legacy that was done over 25 years ago. And I don't know how many people of you are familiar with this map, but it was a collaborative voluntary effort between Professor John Godwin, late Professor John Godwin, and myself, and we got funding from the Leventis Foundation. It was published in 1999 and presented to the public at the National Museum in Lagos in 2000. So that's quite a long time ago. And so from inception, I mean, when we first all started working on it, it was about 1996. And it took 4 years of work to complete. I did all the research for it, and John Godwin, organized the funding and the technical production. Now, the question is why we did the map. Well, Legacy really started way back in 1991. And at that point, we were just a Lagos-based organization. We were just going around Lagos sites, in heritage sites, and sort of, noting things of historical interest in Lagos. I mean, sometimes we venture to Oyo State, but we're really just doing things in Lagos. But in 1995, when we registered, that is when we knew that we were going to be national. But then we thought, oh dear, we don't really have the resources to be having trips all around Nigeria. So what should we do? And so we decided to create a map and list sites. And we felt it was a good way to widen interest and get other people involved. And we thought that if the map was spread around, and people in different places would look at the map and then they would sort of report back to us on the sites that we had noted. And so that's the main reason why we decided to produce this map. Now, how did we do it? Well, we used various sources, including the sources from the National Commission for Museums and Monuments. I think they had, I think it was 64 listed sites. That was back then. And I think now they just still have 65, one more at the actual listed monuments now. And so we also were able to obtain documents from the Lagos State government, documentation on historic sites. And we also used some of the research done by Dr. Patrick Darling, because he was looking at sites, possible sites in Nigeria that could be proposed as UNESCO World Heritage Sites. And within the map, we used 3 main classifications: historic sites, and under historic sites came buildings, site settlements, monuments, and rock paintings. And then the other 2 classifications, national museums and national parks. And we donated 3,600 copies of these maps to a number of post-primary educational institutions in every state in Nigeria. Now, pros and cons of having a physical map. There are advantages and disadvantages. Now, first of all, I want to just mention some of the advantages. Well, first of all, no data connection is required. I mean, you don't have to worry about whether you have electricity or data to actually look at the map. That's one obvious advantage. And also, it was a source of revenue because we were able to sell a lot of these maps. And I can tell you that it made a lot of money for Legacy over the years. And another thing is accessibility. Now, okay, accessibility, okay, this is something that you can hold, you can pick up. But this is a story that I haven't really mentioned. But last year I was at an event, and it was actually at an event, a book launch for the latest book written by on the story of the Godwins in terms of their architectural journey. And a lady came up to me and she said to me, "Oh, I understand that you were involved in this map." And I said, "Yes." And she said, "Oh, that she was so pleased because she had been working with people who needed therapy because they'd had strokes. This was in London, and there were some Nigerian patients who were recovering from strokes. And to get them to start to engage and to talk, she would bring out our map and get them to talk about the map. And she said it was a wonderful way of, getting them to engage, getting them to speak. And so, that was one benefit of having a physical map. And apart from that, I mean, I would say that after all these years now, it's become a historical document. It's collectible. There's some nostalgia connected with it. I mean, a lot of people have actually framed the map. I must confess, I still haven't framed it. I framed a copy, but it's something I will still do. Now, to go on to the disadvantages. Now, obviously, with a physical map, there's only a limited amount of space. And some of you who have seen the map might see that there are 129 sites. And you might ask, why 129 sites? I can tell you that when I was doing that research, I could have gone on and on and on. There were so many things that I left out. But, we had to go to production. We had to stop. Limited amount of space. So that is the only reason why there are 129 sites. There we could have put so much more there. So a disadvantage is limited space to do that kind of thing. And of course, things become very quickly outdated. You might ask, why did I put a picture of Jekyll House here? The reason why I put a picture of Jekyll House here is because Jekyll House, which is sort of like a flagship in terms of, building restoration and a project that Legacy took on, because when we were doing the map, this building was just dilapidated. We didn't really know too much about it. It was very much under the radar, and so it missed out being put on the map. Can you imagine? And so this is something that really needs to go on the map. But things get very, very quickly updated. And I also remember people used to come up to me and sort of asked me questions about the map and this and that. And then I remember one gentleman came up to me and he said, "Oh, you made a mistake to do with one of the national parks. There was some information there that wasn't correct." And if it was digital, it would have been very, very easy to quickly correct it. But now I can't even remember what the mistake was. And I'm sure there are some other things on the map that there might be some errors. So you can't quickly update things. And it's also, it's so expensive to update. So those are some of the disadvantages of having a physical map, and I'm sure that there are more. The digital age, the next logical step. Now, of course, I just want to say that the government alone, as we know, cannot protect heritage. Right now, the main government body looking after heritage is the NCMM. Now, one thing, Nigeria is 4 times the size of the United Kingdom. But the United Kingdom has more than 200 non-governmental organizations working on protecting heritage. I don't know how many NGOs are working on Nigeria protecting heritage in comparison. I mean, you think that Nigeria is about 4 times the size of the United Kingdom. So the government not only needs to work with NGOs, but needs to support the growth of NGOs protecting heritage. Now, a digital library is an opportunity for a broader engagement, much wider participation to protect heritage. And of course, you can include the private sector and so many other things. And I'm sure we're going to hear much more about how it's going to work. But one of the things which I hope at some point we will be able to talk about, because it's the questions in my head, is how do you manage sort of these things called open source material, intellectual property rights, and digital protection when you have a digital map? Because I can tell you that over the years, some of the younger members in Legacy have been saying that we should digitize the map and we should go digital. but there are questions about rights and how you protect what you do. So I don't know whether we have time today to have a discussion about those things. But anyway, empowering young people, they are the future. And so they're also already embracing digital technology, young people. And so the next logical step in terms of reaching out to them to get them involved, to help, protect heritage, is to actually use digital technology to do it. And so I think that is something that is really going to be really great. And of course, there are so many endless opportunities here. This project can be linked to education, training, and also there could be possible links with virtual reality and augmented reality tours and all that kind of thing, and links to oral history and documentation. And so it's very, very exciting. And I think that it's a wonderful way to build on ideas that we started almost 30 years ago. And along with myself, I know that if, John Godwin was here with us, that he would be just as excited and would give his support to this as well. So thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to talk a little bit about the map. Thank you very much.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much, Ma, for this wonderful exposition. It was really enlightening. And we will have the opportunity to have questions after the whole session. So we can prepare our questions towards this session so that we can have a bit of discussion, but it will be after the main session. But for now, we'll be welcoming Dr. Olly Owen to take us on why digital mapping matters. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I've just put my camera on to say hi, but I'm going to put it off again because I've been having Wi-Fi problems, which is why I joined a bit late. But thank you so much. Mrs. Adeleke, thanks for that last presentation. I think I might take off from where you left off, so to speak. And I'm also really happy, Buki, you brought us together to talk about this. You really put a lot of energy into bringing this together. I thought, why digital mapping matters? Okay, let's put aside the issue of paper map. I do think that there are some great things about a paper map. And one of the things, by the way, as Mrs. Adeleke says, some people have it framed. It's nice for people to have an object they can buy that celebrates things that they put in a frame. When we put something in a frame, it shows we're celebrating it. And I think it's great that people are celebrating Nigeria's heritage in a frame. But let's talk about digital mapping. I think one thing is literally the sheer volume. So you just said, Mrs. Adeleke, you just said that it was, I think, 129 sites that you put, and then you had to stop. So let's throw some other considerations into there. I was just part of a process supporting creation of Edo State Heritage Law with a register of sites. That register of sites came up with more than 50 in Edo State alone. You can think of all the historic sites in Benin City and outside. But let's even be conservative and say that a state only came up with 20. And most states have more than 20 local governments, so that's already just one site per local government. If every state came up with 20, you'd have more than 700 straight away. So the sheer volume, it's manageability. Secondly, of course, it's not just a two-dimensional thing. A digital map is a gateway into a database. And a digital map can have links. A digital map can have resources connected to it. A digital map, you can link a place, you can tag online academic publications about the thing that you're looking at. It can be really, really three-dimensional. You can have a portal to all the knowledge that people need to know just by rolling a mouse or just scrolling over it. So it actually opens up. It leads into a key problem of Nigerian heritage and Nigeria in general, which is legibility. A lot of people don't come to Nigeria, and a lot of people already in Nigeria don't move around their country and explore other places because they don't know and they find it hard to read or find out about. People go to more dangerous countries with bigger security problems than Nigeria. People go to less interesting countries because there are ways to find out easily at the, glance of a screen or whatever. It's easy to know where you can go and what you can see there. In Nigeria, we're very good at keeping our secrets secret. Nobody really, really, really gets to know what there is, even just down the road. And the amount of times, with legacy, the experience that you have, people coming and saying, "Oh, I never knew this was here," and they live in the same local government. So it's really, really important to have something flexible and usable that people can access. It's really also, I think, important to think about how quickly the digital world moves. So, 5 years ago, we might have been saying, create a website, create a map, do this, this, this. Also, really important to cross-reference what else is out there. So, everybody is using Google Maps or Apple Maps. Things pop up on Google Maps to Apple Maps. So when you're talking about, are you going to create a rival to that, or are you going to integrate with the technology that already exists? So you can imagine, for instance, a situation where you might create an entirely parallel product. You might have a whole website dedicated to it. You might generate the mapping software, or you might just be thinking, okay, can we create a database, a kind of back office that we can then pinpoint on Google Maps? And okay, for every site that we create on Google Maps, we can create a link, we can pin some information, we can make it easy to find out about. How are we actually going to make this thing work practically in a way that integrates into other technology? So there's a whole usability and workability thing to it, which is really important. Just a sec. So it needs to be something that people are not going to go and create, or go and create something at huge expense, at huge trouble, that then doesn't integrate into what other people are using. And this stuff moves. Another point as well is that Nigeria hasn't been doing much archaeology for the last 50 years. Now, archaeology in Nigeria is undergoing a renaissance. And one of the real drivers of archaeology in most places in the world is development. When you build new infrastructure, people tend to do archaeological excavations and they find things. And that is going to generate new sites. Some of the most exciting finds in the world have been by accident while someone was building a road or a motorway. And this, is how things get found. Now, in Nigeria, there's no law about doing development archaeology. And not coincidentally, the built infrastructure in Nigeria has tripled, quadrupled, quintupled in size since the 1960s, and nobody has discovered any new archaeological sites. Funny that. So we have to assume that, in fact, the only Azura Power Station in Edo State is the only large major development in Nigeria in the last 40 or 50 years that's had proper archaeological survey. And they discovered amazing things, sites and moats, field systems, and all kinds of things. So we've been basically destroying archaeology. We've been destroying some of Nigeria's most amazing archaeological sites have just never been found. Bulldozers have gone through them. Whatever finds were there were just obviously, kept in people's houses or thrown away or sold onto the antiquities market illegally. So, but that's coming back. There are now more thoughts about development archaeology, more compliance in terms of ESIAs that major funders of projects are doing. So we're going to find more sites. It's just the volume. And I think this is the question. So it's also when you're building a digital tool, and I think I could say a lot, but maybe I'll come to rest here. When you're building a digital tool, it's also got to be future-proofed. Let's think about how this thing would be used going forward. And are we building a platform that's big enough to be continually updated? Because unlike a map, which you do, and then 20 years later, you talk about doing again, there's got to be something, if you take the model of Wikipedia and other things, or, user reviews, that people are continually interacting with and continually improving. So I just want to create a digital architecture that allows for that continuing improvement. So yeah, really, really challenging, I think, to think about that, but really, really cool and creative and interesting. And, the opportunities that it offers for people doing it in a participatory way and putting their own heritage on the map. I've left aside intangible heritage because that's a whole other thorny issue when you think about time and space. So yeah, Bookie, you've bitten off a huge meal there, but I think it's a really exciting one and really worth doing. I'm going to leave my comments here and hear what you have to say. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Holly, for that wonderful presentation. I mean, we've really gone through rich conversations. We will actually need time to expand these conversations to have like rich communication tonight. But you can also, like I said, you can leave your questions and comments at the comment section. Like I saw, I've seen a comment from Olufemi, so it's something we're going to review during the comment session. Particularly, I love one of the things Dr. Holly said, where he talked about building future-proof features into the maps we'll be doing. And then he also mentioned something about intangible heritage. So I'm really glad about this conversation we're having tonight. So we'll be going next to what the demo is like, a first-hand experience in filling out the sites that we're going to use to collect these heritage sites that we have. So I want us to pay attention, don't get tired, and enjoy this. And we are going to be having Buki and Marshall to take us through this. So over to you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. I'm really grateful for this opportunity to be able to do this with Legacy. I'm a member of the organization, and I'm very enthusiastic about this idea of capturing so much of our heritage in tools that can grow, and like Dr. Owen said, are future-proof. So primarily what I'm advocating for and what I'm hoping that we take away from this session is that Legacy is building a digital library. So based on all the knowledge that we already have, we want to gather from the entire community and as wide as we can, any information we can about heritage sites, events, locations, just different types of heritage information, and begin to create internally a library of that kind of information. We've made it pretty simple for people to submit their information. So I'm just going to do a Google form. So it's very simple, like interface that most people are very familiar with. But I want to go through just how it should work. The link to access this form will be sent into the group. It's been sent before. FA, who's the host of this webinar, we've been discussing it, and she's going to help us with the 12-week campaign. So she's going to be posting it into the Legacy Common Room group as often as possible, reminders that people should please add their thoughts to this digital library. So please don't get tired when you see those messages. We really want you to engage and to add your thoughts. But it's just a really simple, simple way to fill in. Yeah, so I pre-filled this one because I didn't want to take too much time. The Google form starts out with just some information about what you can put into the heritage sites like collation. We have space for if you want to submit a location, which is for specific heritage sites or landmarks or buildings. You can think about that as something that you can put like a longitude and latitude marking to. So if you can find it on Google Maps, or if you can actually put it on a map, then think of it as a location and you can submit it as that. For events, we are asking people to submit activities, seminars, programs, festivals, cultural, just cultural events, anything that you can think of that you participated in. It doesn't have to be too formalized. If you have any kind of memories that you want to share with us about different kinds of festivals from all around the country, all around the continent, we are open to capturing that. And then publications for maps, books, brochures, or research related to heritage sites. That's what we have this form for. When you get onto the page, you put in your email address, and then you get into this drop down where you select the kind of information. If you're not doing a location or event or publication, then you can hit other, and there's some questions that you fill out just to give more details about what you're submitting. And if there's ever any challenge that you can't submit it because it's not like the categories don't feel comfortable, then you can just send us an email and we'll figure out how to get your site included. So for a location, for example, excuse me, the first thing that you need to do is do the location name. Here I put in Jekyll House as an example. For location description, just provide a detailed description of the site, including the historical significance, unique features, or any restoration work done. Is just to give some more space to give details about what you know about the location. If all you know is, oh, this is where this was located, or this person lived here, then you can just write that. It doesn't have to be, too lengthy or too complex. Location type, we've tried to give as many different options as possible, but there's also an other option just in case these don't capture. We have historic site, a museum, a monument, a natural landmark, a heritage building, a cultural center, a place of worship, a park or garden, archaeological site, or memorial site. Then the geographic location. The simplest way that we're hoping people will do this is to include a Google Map link, because at the end of this, we want to be able to digitally map, all of these locations. If you don't have a Google Map link, you can look into how to sharing longitude and latitude and longitude of the location. I think that that's accessible if you're physically standing in the space and maybe with the Google Map apps, but you can do it however you want. You can just put the information there. If you don't have any information about the geographic location, then it's best to just include whatever notes that you can. But primarily what we're asking for here is a link to a Google Maps location or the actual data points. Is the location currently open to the public? Yes or no? The current status, if it's, for example, the headquarters of the Brazilian Descendants Association, is this location the present location? Is it, has it been relocated? Has it been demolished? So we can capture just, what you're telling us about the site. You can also upload images. You can upload up to 5 images, just so that we didn't want people to feel overwhelmed by that. But if you have more images, you can email them to us and we can catalog them. But this is just for accessibility's sake. You can add a file, select a file from your Google Drive or your computer and upload it as you need to. Okay, once you put in those details for the location, this submission follow-up comes with each of the different types of submission. So before you submit, we want some final details to confirm if you're a member of Legacy. You don't need to be, but if you are, we would like to know. If you're willing to be contacted for more information or updates relating to this submission, you need to fill that in. And then you select your preferred contact method, email, phone, WhatsApp, and then you fill in the email, phone, or WhatsApp number that you're comfortable sharing with us. And lastly, you attest that the information that you provided in the form is accurate to the best of your knowledge, and you have the necessary rights to share any uploaded files. The idea is not to gather information that is not necessarily accessible to you, at least for the members of the Legacy organization. Everybody, so many people here are already heritage enthusiasts. So we're trying to gather the knowledge that is already within this community. And we want to be able to use that to build up a very credible database and digital library going forward. I'll be here for the rest of the presentation. So if anybody has any questions, you can definitely ask me, but that's how you submit to the Heritage Sites Collation, to the digital library. I hope that was clear and helpful. We can move on to the next section now. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. There were questions that came up. Well, I think we could just maybe, before we go to the next session with Dr. Adun, talking about if the buildings will have age limit. We're going to also address that. We're going to address all of these questions, even the part about ArcGIS and story mapping, because it will be very instrumental, especially since we want to get location like longitude and latitude. So everyone with a question, please, I would encourage us to just exercise a bit of patience to wait till we finish this. This is the last session. The next session we'll be having will be the last session with the guest speaker. So I will be addressing the building age and the limit. We'll have time to ask questions. So right now we'll be going to welcome our main guest, Dr. Adun, as she would be taking us in the next stage of this. So Dr. Adun is Adun Okupe. She's a researcher and strategist whose work sits at the intersection of heritage and tourism and placemaking. She's the executive director of the Sahara Center and principal advisor at Red Clay Advisory, where she leads initiatives that center culture, sustainability, and community in development planning. Dr. Okupe has advised institutions on cultural policy, destination strategy, and inclusive research practices. And she'll be taking us on key questions: archiving as a tool for identity, continuity, and belonging, the role of memory in how communities are seen and sustained, digital tourism as a way to turn memory into cultural access and education, inclusive archiving as a strategy for local development and global understanding. So let's welcome Dr. Adu Okupe as she takes us to the next session. Thank you.
Hello, good evening, everyone. I hope you can see me. And it's really nice to be here. This is really just a conversation, and I really thank you for inviting me to come and speak. And kudos to us that were able to join at 8 p.m. to go through this. So I'm going to try very hard to not make it too much of a lecture, and hopefully it's a conversation. So if you have questions, you can ask in the chat box. Thanks to Ms. Adeleke and Buki and Efe as well so far. And so what I wanted to really talk about is a lot of the work that we do at Red Clay is tourism development, so a lot of work in tourism development. And what that means is that for the most part, when we think about what creates a sense of identity, how do you actually shape a space? How do you make a space? A lot of it is really to do with creating a sense of connection. And where we are in Nigeria, because a lot of our work is outside of Lagos, so where we are in Nigeria is that when you think about this connection to the place, most of these stories, you have to know somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody. And what that means then is that there's a lot of history that is being eroded, and there's a lot of authenticity, or rather accuracy, that also actually disappears. And so when we think about even our sites are rapidly eroding. At the moment, we're doing some work in Ekiti and Anambra states. And when the tourism development work requires so much work to even make sure that the site is protected and preserved and conserved. So that's really the state that we're at. And so I would say that, when we think about archive, and I'll come to talk about archiving as this tool for continuity and belonging, but what I'm really starting with is really thinking about the role of memory, and just ensuring in terms of how communities are seen and sustained, but also how communities see themselves and how communities understand who they are. And so I would say that I love the idea of this memory map and mapping that Legacy is doing. I would say that a lot of our work has to really think about this connection with the stakeholders in the communities to help them see a new way of seeing. There's a project, there's a site in one of the states, and the communities were not even aware of the tourism potential, or even that there's this sites that is sacred sites where things of key significance, but it's taking them interacting with the tourism ministry to really start to see that, and then they can see that they can generate alternative sustainable livelihoods from these sites, which help them actually create this system of conserving and preserving it as well. And so the question then is, how do we remember? How do places remember themselves? How do we help places remember themselves? And how do we help places speak of themselves? And one project we're working on is a heritage tourism project, working on waterfalls, caves, and lakes, right, which we're helping them to convert into some sort of sanctuaries. And one of the experience from that is really thinking about, how do I say it? How do we also retell the stories around, spirituality, religion, in a way that also connects with a wider network of people? So not just the residents of those communities, but also other, the tourists, the visitors, etc., and people coming from outside of the community to really start to understand that these sanctuaries, as we're calling them, are not necessarily, they're not demonic, they're not scary, they're not going to do anything to them. So there's also this sense of translating and repurposing. And I say this because when we think about this memory mapping, and when we think about, sacred sites were one of the key sites that they mentioned here, and ancestral sites. That is really one of the gaps, right? With the advent of, Abrahamic religion, that has been one of the gaps that we've had in our communities or in our society, that means that people don't connect to these sites, they don't connect to these places because they think that they are satanic, they think they're demonic, and they think it's wrong for them to do that. So even retranslating and really helping to provide case studies, and what I do typically is that we typically provide case studies from different parts of the world to show how all these other places, I like to talk about Japan, I like to talk about India, I talk about Rome as well, have really moved from those, the traditional religion, not because they're not stopping it, but they've been able to create new identities around these sites that still preserve and respect the existing traditional religious practices, but also create new ways to interact with new visitors and people that don't necessarily adhere to those traditional customs. And so the work, I would say, is even as we're doing this memory mapping, we have to start thinking behind our, at the back of our mind, saying memory for what, mapping for what, and how do we actually connect the traditional and move that in a journey towards connecting to the contemporary or to the modern times in a way that is respectful, that reinforces local narratives, but also provides a way to preserve this intangible memory and history. And so the idea of, I'm not going to talk now about the idea of the memory map, which is, I think, is a powerful contribution, because what it does, it's, this sense of crowdsourcing actually moves from the personal and community memories into a collective resource. And what this does is it actually provides, more accessibility, more awareness, more connections of people like me, people that are doing work around these fields, visitors, etc. I don't even know if it's necessary for visitors, but I think I would see this more as being relevant to people that are like researchers or stakeholder engagement practitioners, etc., that are working in this mid space, can actually pull this collective resource and see how they can disseminate it to the visitors in ways that are relatable and relevant. I would say as well that one of the key things is that this actually helps us to also work with the locals, right? So I would think we will work with the locals to help them to also become the storytellers, activate them as storytellers, let them understand that what they have is meaningful, what they have is powerful, and how can they move to that. And then because of this challenge of knowing what the authentic truth is or what the accurate truth is, when we have multiple voices talking to a certain site, right? And what Buki in her demo showed us is that because of the categorization, we can start to pull information about certain sites. Hopefully the oral histories, photographs, personal narratives, maps can really add depth and can really add layering, right? Layers that can help us to really peel to understand more about what the space is. And from a tourism perspective, what this does is this really just brings the destination to life. You think about places that you visit around the world or that we visit around the world. What is it about? What is it about the destination that makes it unique? It's always about the stories. It's always about what has happened, how people used to live, how they live now. And that journey, right? That journey through how they used to live to where they are now, and seeing what that narrative has evolved to be like. And I would say that, if I bring this to digital tourism, and I don't know how, I do know how long I have, and I'm going to, I still have a few slides, but I'm going to shorten it quickly. But when I bring it to digital tourism, I always have to start by saying most of our sites are not even in the condition that they can be documented in terms of photographs, right? In terms of photographs that would actually make them appealing. So one thing we definitely have to do or start to think about, and this is beyond the mapping, is to say, okay, how does this mapping also help us to activate the sites in a way that develops and transforms them for the future? Because if we're thinking about digital tourism, we're not there yet, but we can start to have the stories, we can start to have the personalized journeys, we can start to really think about the trail. So I liked when I saw the presentation with the different icons that shows how you can even create trails and routes, we can start to think about heritage trails and storytelling that can move people from one destination or one site to the other, and the stories around the way. So then what it is that you're not looking at the poor state of the site that you see now, but you're captivated by the journey as you navigate moving from one place to the other. And this also helps us to really think about interactive maps, which is another project that we're actually working on, which is we're creating a tourist map. And one of the challenges, again, is back to what I said, which is you have the map, but then when the people go there, what do they see? What do they hear? And how do the residents even understand that tourism is something that they can celebrate as opposed to something that they can tax? So very quickly, I think just a few things to note before I round off, and I can answer questions. And I can really talk about this for a very long time, but I'm trying to just really only mention certain touch points. Is how, I think as a practitioner, for me, the question is, how do we make this alive beyond just storing data? So we have to make sure that we're able to tell coherent stories with the archiving, but also we need to start to really think about how to use the archives to influence future planning and preservation policy. And I think that that's quite a powerful contribution from the archive memory map project. And we also need to make sure that we really create more, maybe recorded sessions to help people know how they can access it, and let people know how they can upload and how they can document. But then the question is, how do we also ensure data integrity, sustainability, etc.? But one thing that I wanted to say was that, and I think I mentioned this with Buki and Effie when we were discussing earlier, is that for me, when I think about our intangible heritage, and they were playing this song where we started by Victor Waifo. When I hear this music, right, which is quite intangible because it's just a piece of music. I remember Victor Waifo telling us about how he was by this bar beach, and then he started, I don't know, ideating, whatever, and then he was able to think about, oh no, that was Guitar Boy. I think it was Guitar Boy, not Jerome. Or maybe I've confused it. But anyway, the point is that immediately, every time I hear his piece of music, I'm transported to the side that it was. And it's a shame that Babbage doesn't exist anymore. Of course, he's also gone, but then also transported to, his home in Benin. And just all of these things really show how powerful memory is, but also how powerful our different means and forms of preserving our stories are, and I don't know how we move from here in a way that will help us to really bring this to, because Miss Adeleke was talking about when she started it, all of those different things. So I know that the challenges exist, but I guess what I just really want to come to close with is that it's very important that we push on, and we always think about how do we do this in the right way, so that even if we're only moving the needle from one spot to the next, we're doing that other people can move forward with and can utilize and go with. So I have some questions on the demo that we were shown, and one of the questions I have is, how do we start to really analyze and categorize and in 10 years time, 20 years time, 25 years time, how do we really pull all of this together so that we have our voices, we have our places, and we also have our authentic experiences and the truth. And also, how do we really help people understand the power of memory? And I say this because most times when I speak to, I hope nobody has said, I say this because most times when I speak to the locals in the communities, for them, they don't see the importance of it. They really don't. And until we can really get them to see the importance of this, the sites are not going to be preserved, the sites are not going to be celebrated, the sites are not going to be amplified. And it's unfortunate, I would say, that right now in our world, in our current world, most of the things that we see as being worthwhile are things that have economic benefits. So I guess the challenge is for us to think about how to translate this into some sort of economic benefit, because that's really the way that we can help the stakeholders to really protect and preserve their communities. But I'm also open to other people's feedback and comments. But in a lot of the work I've done, around West and East Africa, I find that until it translates into this, the realities of development and the realities on ground are just not at that level where they're going to really just do it because we tell them it's going to fade or it's going to erode or they have to preserve it. It has to also make sense for their own livelihood. And so that's really where it is. But of course, organizations like Legacy, organizations like ourselves, what we can do is see how we can commit to at least protecting these pieces of heritage, so that when we do get to places in 10, 15, 20, 25 years time, hopefully there's actually something to look back on and fall back on. So those are the key things I wanted to talk about. Thank you so much. I think I might have gone out of the 15 minutes I was given, but I was trying to just provide touch points to all of that. Okay, so I'm going to conclude here, but if you have any, I think I have some comments, I will respond to them after I read them. Yes, okay, thanks, John, for your comment in terms of the spiritual aspect. So what we're doing, to answer your question, because in fact, you can't work in West Africa, particularly in West Africa. East Africa is a bit different as a market, but in West Africa, you can't work in West Africa in tourism without having to address this. And you should see my conversations with the clients to say, yes, we don't want to package, we don't want to commodify them at all. So one thing we're doing, so let me give an example of this site that we're working on in one of the states. And one thing we have been able to help them to do is that we went to speak to the traditional rulers, the healers, all the different people, the residents, the locals, blah, blah, blah. Well, one thing we're able to, and they all had their different concerns, right? Which I think is very important. So the traditionalists, this was the priests and their family, were very concerned that they're very open to tourism, but they were very concerned about commodifying it, but also eroding the sacredness of their site. And for them, actually, their argument was their practices is what has conserved this site until today, right? So for me, that's a sustainability question. And so for me, we're telling a sustainability story, which is that the traditional spiritual practices, so we're actually calling them spiritual practices, right? As opposed to religious practices, right? The spiritual practices are a form of conservation. So, when we think about sacred forests, sacred rivers, sacred lakes, right? They're a form of conservation that actually help protect the biodiversity, the wildlife, the life and biodiversity. So that's one. The second part is what we've been able to negotiate for one of the sites is actually having dual access. So we're going to create for the traditionalists, we're going to create their own pathways to go deep into the site. And then we're going to create another pathway that will be for visitors, right? So they won't actually mix. An example is when you go to Japan and you go and visit the temples, you're not going into where the monks are actually sitting down meditating deeply. They created a tourist site for you in their gardens. You can see some elements of it, but you don't need to go deep inside. Same with when you go to Hindu temples. So in the same way, we don't need to take them into where the practices are being enacted. So that is going to help preserve their sanctity, and they're going to, the sanctity, and it also creates a way to show that these things are not as scary, etc., as we think they are. And so we're not going to commodify. Another thing we've actually negotiated with the site is, these are like 5 sites now, but is carrying capacity. So what you don't want is 100 people, 200 people. You want to have 10 people, 20 people, 30 people at a time, right? And you have a number of people that can visit per day. And you also have times that people can visit. So it's not something that's happening all the time. So all of these things are being negotiated, which I think is important. But just so that I don't go off topic, one thing that is so powerful has been being able to document the history, the heritage over time, and having some sort of memory of the significance over time. And I'm just afraid that if we don't continue to do this, the custodians are going away, and with urbanization, particularly in our rural to peri-urban spaces, the young people are not there to actually carry this forward. And so this intervention, I would say, is also still very powerful and very timely now. Thank you. I'll stop here because Buki has put on her video, so I think I need to stop. I think I've spoken for like 30 minutes. Sorry.
No,
Thank you.
thank you so much. That was very, very enlightening. I just want to answer your question while we still have a couple of minutes. I'm sure everyone has questions. We'll get to them.
There's some questions from story mapping that was mentioned earlier for Mrs. Adeleke. I don't know if that can be answered also. And yes, the building age limit also for the documentation.
Thank you. I'll answer the questions on the demo, and then if we still have some time, we'll definitely have Ms. Adeleke answer the question. But she already asked the gentleman who asked the question to send her an email. So, you know, hopefully we capture everybody's thoughts. I mostly wanted to take a second to say that in the conversations that we have had with all the members of Legacy who have pulled into this project and, you know, who've been working on this, this is not short-term work, right? We're very aware of the fact that this is a long-term idea. And in truth, at the heart of it is to place Legacy as part of the infrastructure that the future is going to be built on, right? Once we build a digital library and we have at least a database of information that we are continuing to build off of, we can then set structures internally for what we verify, how we verify, what can just be, okay, user-generated content that isn't verifiable, but it's accessible, right? And we can start giving different tags and accessibility points for different reasons for that. But you can't start that work if you don't already have the centralized databasing. So the idea is for long-term, this information to be functional for studies, for, you know, different reasons, tourism. But we, at least for me, I think Legacy is well positioned to be an organization that can hold that memory together and manage it going into the future for the sake of its own, like, sustainability, as well as for all of us. Dr. Cooper, I hope I answered your question about what we're going to do, with this information, but that's kind of the way I'm seeing it. So it's a long-term investment and it's a long-term project, but the idea is that it's also going to be a bit of a lifeblood for the organization to build on, you know, going forward. For the age of heritage sites, there is no limit. You can put anything that you can remember. If you know the year, put it in, like, there's no limit. The idea is to capture as much as we can capture for as far back as we can. So, you know, please don't be limited by that.
Okay. I also wanted to mention something. Dr. Adu also mentioned something. She said because the major challenge we have is the people on the grassroots appreciating the heritage they have. Because if you want to take people to those sites, they must appreciate, the people around have to appreciate it. So I think that can only be solved basically by grassroots advocacy, to let people know that these things are really treasured and make it not like I was in a meeting and one of the things that was emphasized is how people have associated this heritage to poverty, and they feel like maybe because they are poor and then they don't want to identify with something that is poor. So if there is no grassroots advocacy to ensure that people know that the heritage we have is not due to poverty, then maybe they would appreciate it more. And when they appreciate it more, we can even talk of preserving, because we can be taking pictures and taking people there and the people around don't even value it. So it's a whole conversation. Unfortunately, our time is up. So I appreciate everyone for joining the meeting tonight. I appreciate everyone. I appreciate all our speakers. Appreciate everyone for joining. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone. We can actually stay for a couple of minutes. Additional.
Okay. Yes, I wanted to make a comment on ArcGIS. I actually have been able to use ArcGIS for a particular project, and it's really very good because it allows you to even take the longitude, the latitude to document the exact point of the site, which would be really good. I don't know if Mr. Olufemi is here to enlighten on this.
He might have to share that in our common room or via email with the team. But we're very open to working with him on that. That sounds very interesting. But yes, like Dr. Cooper said, this is 9 o'clock, so people need
it's 9 actually.
get to their life.
But thank you. Ms. Adeleke is raising her hand.
Yes, yeah, please. Sorry. I have two quick questions for Bookie. Okay. First of all, you said about the Google form that you're going to have a sort of a 12-week push to get it all out. and you're going to post it on the Legacy Common Room. But are you then going to tell people that they should in turn put the form out on their own platforms? I mean,
yes,
you see that, and I think that's something that I felt was missing. That you have, when we're contacting people, you then tell people that they should please spread it out to other people. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
That's one thing. And then the second thing, I did mention in my sort of little talk, I did talk about open access, open source, and all that kind of stuff. I mean, is this open access, open source? And because it's a big job, as you say, and it's going to be a long-term thing. And so is there any way that you can, any sort of way to generate revenue from doing this to support it? You see, I'm not quite sure about, you know, how, you know, all the, I mean, I'm not sort of into this kids kind of thing, as you can probably realize. I mean, open access, open source, intellectual property, digital rights, all of that. Have you been thinking about that, those kind of things?
Yes, we have actually. I've spoken to Dr. Owen about it a couple of times. I haven't pinpointed, but the idea is for it to be a revenue generating stream for the organization. Putting the information together, even if it's publicly accessible, if you want to give people, for example, like downloadable. So if you put the database together and then you give people tools to search and collate and then download certain information, we can charge certain amounts of money for that. Especially for researchers and educators, they would definitely want like collated, verifiable information. So we wouldn't be charging for the data because a lot of it would be publicly accessible, but that depends on what we get in and how we filter and verify it. But we will be able to charge a service for the collation, a service for the delivery of maybe, you know, a PDF or whatever it is, or any, you know, additional like revenue stream that we can pinpoint from there. But yes, the expectation is it's supposed to make the organization
yeah, because I just thought about that because it's a lot of work. And, you know, I think as you get more people involved, you know, we might need money to support the whole work that's going on behind it. Yeah. And also to, I don't know, protect it in some way. I don't know. Well, thank you very much and very well done, Bookie. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Thank you, FA, for hosting. You've done such a good.
Thank you.
Yeah, but I think that we have we've come to the end of this very interesting session. We'll probably be in the common rooms and in your WhatsApp groups asking you to add your voice to the digital library. But we're really grateful that you added your voice here and you joined and you participated. Thank you, Dr. Okukwe, Dr. Owen, Mr. Adeleke, for your time. We're very grateful for all of that.
Good night, everyone.
All right. Bye, everyone. Thank you so much.
Good night, everyone.